Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about this small little slate we have here of just 5 games. So this one's going to be pretty simple from beginning to end. We've got an 11-run total at Coors Field, a couple 8-run totals and 8.5. But outside of that, you're pretty much targeting whichever ones of these bats you can get. But going to be interesting on DraftKings because obviously you have to play 2 pitchers. So let's go ahead and get into that. My favorite on the night is Jordan Zimmermann. Minus 250 favorite against Atlanta. It is an 8-run total, but Atlanta with a small team total. Zimmermann, 25% strikeout rate to 3% walk rate over the past month. Not a guy that has monster upside, but I think he's your best cash game option. Atlanta does not strike out a ton, but he's an effective pitcher that should easily be able to give you a quality start. Outside of one bat and Freddie Freeman, you're really not worried about anyone in that lineup. Been one of the worst offenses in all of baseball over the past 30 days. Scored less runs than any team. Lowest team ISO down there at the bottom, and WRC Plus, Team WOBA, etc., etc. So he's my favorite option. I like Francisco Liriano, but he has not been very good recently. Outside of a start against Washington, he hasn't been getting very many strikeouts. He's walking too many batters again, 12% rate over his past month. I think he's a fine option. Not a guy I'm going to be forcing into my cash games tonight, though, against this Milwaukee offense that it's about middle of the pack now. They have a couple bats that can punish you, some guys that hit lefties well. I'm not saying that he's in a void, but he's not a guy that I feel like I have to have in my cash games. I like the other side of that, Taylor Youngman at $10,200. He has alternated good and bad starts over his past 5, 28, 3, 33, 3, and 23 DraftKings points there. Something like a tongue twister. But over the past 30 days, a 27% strikeout rate. You don't like his walk rate, but what you do like is the fact that he's been good and he's missing a lot of bats, swing strike rate of almost 12% over that span. So I think he's another option for you. More of a GPP guy there. And then you can look at Edison Volquez against the Tigers. Tigers have not been very good. Volquez has been all right. It's been a while since he had a blow-up start. But, I mean, against Boston, gave up 5 earned runs 2 starts ago. He's got an okay floor tonight at 9,100. Not one that I love, though, but he's been an above-average pitcher, so I think he's an okay option. Matt Latos, another guy, has not been very good, but probably my favorite option of the cheap guys at 7,300 against San Diego. Not a very good offense right now, as you know. Latos, a guy that does struggle at times with both left-handed and right-handed bats over the past month. He's been pretty good, though. Ground ball rate of almost 55% over the past month. Strikeout rate of almost 20%. But he's only made a few starts during that span, of course, because he was missing some time. He just hasn't been effective. He hasn't pitched even 90 pitches in any of his last 7 starts. So he's not a guy that's pitching deep into games. He was in the bullpen, and then now he's back. So you don't expect he's going to pitch deep. I like him as a secondary option only because all the other secondary options are so bad. But, I mean, he's not a guy that you love. So that's the state of affairs for tonight. Find pitchers that you don't hate and move on because you're going to want some of these hitters. Buster Posey, one of the top plays overall in the slate tonight against the lefty at Coors Field. He's $5,000, but certainly your top option at catcher. I don't think it's close. Jonathan Lucroy, nice GPP option against Liriano. Has been hitting very well. We know he hits lefties throughout his career, so that's a good option for you there. Nick Hundley hits righties well. It's Vogelsong at Coors. Same old story there. Sal Perez against the lefty is not a guy that I love. He's been bad against lefties, but Matt Boyd has been awful against everyone, so I think he's an option for you. Wilson Ramos, another one of those guys against Matt Whistler, who's actually been better against righties than lefties as well, but definitely a guy that I'm looking to pick on. Washington has a nice big team total. And then if you have to have a cheap guy tonight, which you might need, Alex Avila, if he's in the lineup at $2,200, I think he's in a fine spot there. Not a guy that's been hitting very well at all this season, but certainly a guy that can provide you with some value so you can get some big bats elsewhere. First base options. My favorite option on the night is going to be Ryan Zimmerman, $4,200 against Whistler. He has been one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball recently. You got to love him. Brandon Belt's in cores at 5,200, but doesn't hit left-handed pitching particularly well. Chris Rusin is terrible against lefties and righties, but for me, he's just a GPP option at that price. You could always play Posey at first with the multi-position eligibility at FanDuel, or I'm sorry, at DraftKings. Adrian Gonzalez, another option at $4,400 against Colin Ray. I think he's an okay spot. Kendrys Morales as well. Not much power against lefties, and ISO barely 100, but I think he's an okay option. But really the chalk play, I'll probably be playing him in the outfield, but you can certainly play him at first. He's going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate, I would imagine. Ben Paulson, $3,500. Ryan Vogelsong allowing a $374 WOBA to lefties. And Ben Paulson's a lefty, batting in the heart of this order at Coors Field. Kind of a no-brainer play for you there. I'm not playing Victor Martinez. I know he's so cheap. Volquez, like I said, has been pretty good, and he's just been awful, so I'm just not targeting that. You can play Kyle Parker at $2,300. Hasn't done much recently, but if you just need a cheap piece of Coors Field, you could do that. I'd probably prefer him in the outfield, though, as well. Second base options, Matt Duffy in Coors Field. He has not been good at all against lefties this season, but I think I'll give him a little bit of a pass here because this is Chris Rusin at Coors Field. I do think, though, I much prefer having Ian Kinsler, who was having a phenomenal second half of the season against Edison Volquez. A tougher matchup, yes. Park factor, downgrade, yes. But much, much better hitter in this matchup. So I prefer him. Duffy, more of a GPP option for me here. Ben Zobrist against Matt Boyd, going to be one of the best plays here. Didn't waste any time homering last night. Homer in the first inning. He's been great against left-handed pitching this season, so you got to give him a look. Neil Walker, if you're not playing Taylor Youngman, give him a look. But Justin Turner, $3,500, looking nice. Second base, third base, been incredible in righty-righty matchups this season. So I like him quite a bit. Anthony Rendon as well, feeding into that national stack as well. And then Kelby Tomlinson, if he gets a decent lineup spot, $3,300 for a cheap piece of course. Very small sample size, but he has had some success against lefties, so he's worth a look. Chase Utley at $2,900, going to be your cheap punt play, probably a pretty popular one, I would imagine, as well. Third base options, it's Nolan Arenado, and it's the rest of these guys. $5,700, 7 hits, 3 homers his last 3 games. Facing off against Ryan Vogelsong, who is a fly ball pitcher that struggles at keeping the ball in the park. Can't imagine he's going to have much success in Coors Field tonight, as most pitchers don't. So Nolan Arenado, easily the top play for me. Duffy also has eligibility here. So does Miguel Cabrera. Don't love either one at their price tags. DJ LeMahieu at $4,300, I think is an okay option. Like I said, I much prefer Arenado. Other guys, Ryan Zimmerman, who I already mentioned, you could play down here as well. Anthony Rendon also, same with Justin Turner. So a lot of these guys with multi-positional eligibility, and there's really no cheap option that really stands out. Guy who had a big game last night, if you want a bare minimum punt, Cheslor Cuthbert went 2 for 3 with a home run and 4 RBIs. I mean, if you just absolutely have to have a punt, if he's in the lineup, you can look at him, but you don't love it. It's just one of those guys that's just kind of a filler for you if you need a cheap play down there. Shortstop options, of course, you got Jose Reyes at $4,500 against Vogelsong. You got to love him. If Brandon Crawford's in, I love him in the lefty-lefty matchup. Tends to go overlooked, but he's very good in lefty-lefty matchups here. Ian Desmond, a nice tournament play at $3,600. Once again, Jimmy Rollins continues to hit well enough that he's in play each night. At $3,400, you don't love the tag, but he's certainly a guy to consider. John Segura at the same price against Liriano for your GPPs. Certainly a guy that's a decent value. Kelby Tomlinson also has shortstop eligibility. And then as you look down at the bottom, really nothing that stands out. If Daniel Descalso's in, you can play him at $2,000, but you imagine he'll probably bat 7th or 8th, maybe even 9th. So just not a guy that really has any sort of confidence in. Zero upside with him, really. Outfield's where it's going to get interesting. Lorenzo Cain left last night. Looks like it was more of a precaution. Gotta love him against the lefty if you're swerving off of Coors Field at $5,200. But the easy top play, and I don't think it's even close, Carlos Gonzalez is $4,300 against Ryan Vogelsong, coming off a 2 home run, 7 RBI performance last night. And since the beginning of June, he has 29 home runs. So Ryan Vogelsong, Coors Field, you got to imagine his ownership is going to be through the roof tonight, and it should be. Easily the top play, especially when you factor in price overall in this slate. Charlie Blackmon at 48, nice play as well. If Bryce Harper's in the lineup, I love Bryce Harper as a lefty against Matt Whistler, who has allowed a 444 WOBA and 9 homers in just over 34 innings to lefties. Ryan Braun against Liriano for your tournaments, another guy that's in play for you there. Zobrist, who I mentioned at second, you can play in the outfield. Matt Kemp, Justin Upton. I like that little mini stack there against Latos if you're not playing Latos. Jason Worth against Whistler again. He homered again last night. He's finally starting to get it going, so I like him. Ben Paulson, of course, you can play out here. Andre Ethier finally got a little bit of a price bump. He's up to 3,300. I think he's still a fine value play, but for me, so many options at the top. I'm looking to pay for all of them, but my favorite cheap play, if you've got to have one, got to be Johnny Gomes at 2,400 against the lefty and Boyd. I mean, mention that Royals high team total. I will probably be paying for all three of my outfielders if I can, but if not, that's the way I'll be going. Thank you for hanging out with me here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.